In this demonstration you will learn when it is necessary to raise the commands can execute changed event. Let's switch to Visual Studio. Here I've opened the customer's view SAML file of the customer's application. In the previous clip, you bound these command properties to commands of the customer's view model. Now let's also bind the command property of the delete button to a command property in the view model. So on this button, let's set the command property and let's bind it to a delete command property of the view model that is in the data context. This delete command property does not exist in the view model yet. You have to create it. So let's go to the Solution Explorer and let's open here the customer's view model. I scroll down in this view model to the command properties and I copy here the move navigation command property and I paste it again. Let's call the new property delete command. Now let's scroll up to the constructor to initialize this delete command property in the constructor. So here, let's use that delete command property and let's initialize it with a new delegate command instance. Let's call the execute method delete and the can execute method can delete. Now I press Ctrl dot and Visual Studio suggests me here to generate the can delete method. I hit enter to do this. I press Ctrl dot again to generate also the delete method. Now, compared to the other commands, we have here also a method for the can execute logic. Now let me just grab these two methods and I cut them from here and I paste them at the bottom of this customer's view model because they are private methods. I also want to name these two object parameters just parameter. So I copy that name from here and I paste it for these two methods. Now let's implement these two methods and let's start with the can delete method. You should be able to delete a customer if a customer is selected. So let's return from this method, return selected customer is not null. Now, as this is really a simple check, let's use here an expression body for this method. Next, let's implement the delete method. I check here in addition if the selected customer is not null, and if that's the case, I remove it from the customer's observable collection. So let's use here the customer's observable collection and let's call the remove method for the selected customer. Then, after this, let's set the selected customer property to null. Now the two methods are implemented. Let's try the functionality and let's run the customer's application. As you can see, the delete button is disabled. It called the can execute method of the command and as no customer is selected, that method returned false. Now let's select a customer and you can see the delete button stays disabled. This is because it only calls the can execute method, which is in this case the can delete method, again when you raise the can execute changed event. In our case, you should raise that event every time the selected customer changes. So let's scroll up to the selected customer property of our view model. Here you see this property. Let's expand it. In the setter of this property, after you raised the property changed event, you can grab now the delete command and you call its raise can execute changed method. This method raises the can execute changed event of this command, which means the button in the user interface which is bound to this command will call again the can execute method. In case of the delete command, the can execute method is this can delete method. So the button will refresh its own isEnabled property with the return value of this method. Now let's see if this works. As you can see, the button is disabled. Now let's select a customer and you can see the delete button is now enabled because the can execute changed event was raised. Now let's click on the button to delete this customer and you see it's gone. Now no customer is selected and the delete button is disabled again. As soon as you select a customer, the delete button is again enabled. Alright, now this delete functionality works as expected. Now let's wrap up what you have learned in this module about commands.